Hello and welcome. This month on the CTO Academy podcast, we have Chakradhar, CEO of Ensurity, a cybersecurity company that is focused on biometric passwordless solutions secured by blockchain.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and thanks for joining. It's Wednesday, 9 a.m. Central. This is our fourth podcast of the year, or actually, this is the last year and this year. We started with North America, we moved to Europe, and we moved to India. We are on a globe tour for sure. We've been discussing thanks to CTO Academy, which has been our primary sponsor. We are talking all about digital transformation and the journeys different people that have taken. There are things with the culture, there are things with the country, there are things that are very different. And this is for the first time, where we have the baby boomers to Gen Z working together. What would it mean for the future of the workforce? And to touch on that aspect, we've been very happy to say that we've had the voices of CEOs, CMOs, CIOs, and this time we are very fortunate to have the CEO of Ensurity, Chakradhar. I'll not steal his thunder, but we are touching on a very hot topic today, and I promise it will be a lot of fun and fireworks. With that, I'd like to welcome Chakradhar. Welcome, Chakradhar, and thanks for joining us. Why don't you tell I do know a lot about you. Why don't you tell us and introduce yourself?
Very good morning, Rameshwar. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. I've participated in your earlier podcasts, and thank you to you. Thank you to the CTO Academy. They've all been quite useful and enriching. So I think it's a pleasure and honor to be participating in this discussion from this side. I think it's a great agenda. A lot is happening. A lot happened in 2020. Many changes have happened. Challenging as well as new opportunities. We are in cybersecurity, and it's an interesting space. Obviously, essentially, I believe cybersecurity has moved into boardrooms. This year. Given what happened last year, and I think it's getting its due importance. But the different ideas about cybersecurity that floating around. But I think it's a great area to be in, particularly at Ensurity. We would look at more from how do actually customers get more for less cybersecurity spent, and I think to do that you do need to look at it from the core. That's sometimes very difficult because there are solutions from different vendors, fast changing scenario. So we've been doing some core research around cybersecurity, encryption, identity management, even decentralization stroke blockchain. So these are areas where we're quite interested. I think a lot more will happen this year. I think we could hopefully make real difference to our clients in general, to the internet, because this is a challenge not only facing enterprises but also to common users around the world, and I think that's interesting to us.
Very good. Actually, you've touched upon a number of topics which our audience won't wait anymore. But I've actually read a little bit of your profile. So tell us a journey of what made you, obviously I know about your IIM, but people who do not know IIM, it's like the Yale University for us. What made your journey how did you transform from a full-time employee to an entrepreneur?
Sorry, Rameshwar, can you repeat that last point again?
Yeah, so how did you move, or how did you make a move from a full-time day job, which you obviously had a plush life, to become an entrepreneur? Full of pitfalls and there's risk in it for sure.
A huge amount of risk, and I think that only when you get into it. I've been in technology. I've also been a hedge fund manager, and I've been a financial professional. And I keep meeting some of my friends, colleagues from past, and you joke that hey, we used to call the companies and say, why you've not met your targets, why things are not going right. And, it's easy to ask questions. And when you actually start building things, especially in technology space, very, very fast moving. And, security is even more fast moving, but it's a very challenging thing to be an entrepreneur. And of course, I got in here because I felt that cybersecurity is an area which would see a lot of transformation and opportunity. So I got it. But then, you would learn challenges. In fact, one of the things is we've been building our technologies. We were ahead of the time. And of course, our initial focus has been on B2C clients. So what happened with that is it's difficult to scale, commercially challenging, but you get to learn and you get to build some great products. So we built some really great products, which, if deployed, would be real good solutions to protect against some of the attacks that have happened very recently. But we also learned that a good product will not necessarily be commercially successful or useful to clients. It has to do a lot more things than being technically right. And and that's in security space that often is seen as that you need to over-engineer a product. So we did over-engineer products, and then you realize that it doesn't work that way. So you have to understand the overall IT ecosystem, and that's something we've learned. But we're fortunate that the environment is changing the way at least we've been designing the products.
Yeah, actually, you brought up a very interesting topic, and I'll come back to it. Last year, unfortunately, we've been struck by COVID, and to add to our woes, we've seen a series of breaches. Why don't you talk about it? And then, I've seen you obviously talk or done a lot about this whole biometric. Can you tell what is causing it? Does it mean, actually, I'll make it a three-part question. Maybe let me put it this way. Is our security model fundamentally flawed? Is that the reason why I'm making a bold claim over here? I hope nobody takes an offense. And that's why we're having breaches. And how do we address this? We can't transform the world in one day, but how do we address this?
Yeah, as you said, the IT environment, the internet has grown over the last 20 years, and there are different kind of products, tools built by different vendors. So it's always going to be challenging to secure that. There's no one easy solution. But if I have to again make a bold statement, and as you said, controversial probably, that the internet was never built for serious commerce or serious data usage. Okay. In 20, 25 years, we've started doing everything on the internet. So devices are connected. For example, we are looking at a situation of the Florida water situation. We were reading about it today. Probably a product, and I could be wrong, and I would like to say what I've read about a product like TeamViewer is probably the way it was deployed has cost it. It may not be correct. I'm just reading the news. But, the internet was, in my opinion, was never built for security. In fact, when we started building Ensurity, we said security must be built in, not bolted on. So what we mean by that? So we do have a lot of patch solutions, okay? And these patch solutions, it's like, you put one lock and, that lock is not enough. You put another lock and, you keep on building this. And this is a reason why we have the breaches. Any advanced hacker, and we've been analyzing some APT attacks because we did a lot of B2G work. And APT attackers can get through most of the things. And this is because, the same things keep repeating, that IP addresses. So what is it? And while the internet itself is, from the beginning never built for secure transactions, the all-important identity layer has always been missing. And why we're focusing on identity today? Because we do believe that, identity is underappreciated, underinvested, and sort of taken for granted with what we believe are legacy tools. So the problem with this is that, it's like you have a fortress with walls built with best of the material, but if your key is lost, if your key is not good, you lose access, and that's what is happening. So we do need to look at this more holistically. What are the things used in identity management? Passwords, and that's a big problem. IP addresses. If you look at what FireEye and other smart vendors have been saying, that IP addresses were spoofed, and this is not the first time it has happened. Things like that, which are believed to be the corner of identity, internet identity, can be easily spoofed. So we do need to build something different, and the primitives to build that are there. But I think the willingness to build that is only coming now because of the attacks that are gone. So we do need to take fundamentally different approach to this.
So are we saying that, obviously I've read cybersecurity, Solar, you've done the supply chain attack in Solar works. With all this state-of-art technologies that we've deployed from an AI, are the hackers using the weak link, which is your IDM solutions?
Absolutely. That's what, in fact, most of the forensic work post SolarWinds, and it's not just SolarWinds, different vendors as well. The advanced hackers are using legit credentials, legit certificates to get through. So this is something which can be fixed but has been overlooked. And so one of the issue of using AI/ML, and again, this can be very controversial. There's been a lot more investment in AI/ML based security compared to cryptographic based security. And the former is more intelligence based, heuristic based. The latter is more deterministic. Okay, it's very nice to be AI/ML based solution today. Now, and they are good. I think some of the tools used are very good, but effectively they don't bring the deterministic flavor to your IDM. And I think identity needs to be deterministic. Very simple example. There are solutions which say that if I am accessing this, Zoom link, sitting in this room, because it is using same old IP address and probably geolocation, I should be allowed in. And this is, one way of looking at it. And the other solutions like, facial ID also depends on AI. Now, both these cases can be spoofed. And the problem with AI is that now, if you're using things like facial recognition technology, AI can be your friend and it can be your foe, because there are now AI-based tools which can get through this, because, it's your both sides. So I do believe that, what great work that is done on the AI/ML-based solutions need to be complemented with more deterministic solutions. We need to build digital identity, and that's what we're trying to, that's the piece in the puzzle we're trying to address.
Actually, you brought up a very interesting point. It's good for us. The strongest link is as weak as the weakest link. That's what the saying is, and you kind of made it. But yeah, this is very interesting to talk about deterministic. It all boils down to the math. Interestingly, cryptographic methods and even AI use modeling, which underlying them is the math, which is the science. But it's a very divergent approach. So it's actually good to hear this. Now, zero trust has been there for well over 10 plus years. Now everybody's talking about zero trust. Has it become a trend, or is it now a necessity for us to take zero trust?
Very interesting. It's been, as you said, it's been there. But of course, the need for that has gone up because of the threat levels have gone up, and, people are searching for newer ways to secure. Zero trust as a philosophy is great. I do believe it's difficult to get it right. Why? Because you talk about micro-segmentation, so you limit access to the least minimum possible. Great principle, but again, in a realistic IT environment, you can't just segment it too narrow as well. Okay, so what you need is somewhere in between policy where you need to have a right policy management where the access rights are minimized. You don't have the sweeping rights, as it's been a practice even now or in the past. But however, you can't enforce it very hard either. So that policy management, when it's complemented with a good ID management, one of the things, Rameshwar, we discussed earlier is about password sharing. So an admin sharing password to another admin or a temporary user, okay? And then the original admin forgets to reset that password. So this here is a risky password dangling in the open now. What is the other user going to do with that? Has he written it somewhere? Is he going to abuse it? So these are the things which effectively cannot be enforced. So you need to strengthen the ID as well, ID management as well. So that's why we are focusing on passwordless or eliminating passwords. And the other things like what happened in these attacks come out is the federation. So something we've taken granted, SAML, SSO, OAuth, and then suddenly you're seeing, hey, the end user was never even the picture and the authentication was done. So some of these things need to be fixed as well, along with very good quality policy management. So zero trust is a fad, but it's definitely need to be deployed. But it's a philosophy. But you do need to have proper training, proper architecture, proper tools to get it right. It's just not going to happen by buying. There is no one zero trust box or a package which you can deploy and your problem is done.
So yeah, Chakradhar, actually you're just opening up so many questions to my mind, but I'll keep flowing it. And so you touched about this concept of this whole facial, which is biometric. On one side, you said we're moving to this passwordless, biometric, and all. But at the same time, when we're talking of this biometric, like the speech recognition or the face recognition, which AI can spoof, how do you bring the biometric passwordless authentication, which could be trusted? Is it possible? Maybe through quantum or whatnot?
Well, I think the two parts. Any biometric is analog and it's converted to digital. It's the same as any file. Okay, you need a proper encryption tokenization. So how good is your tokenization and encryption protocol? It all depends on that. And of course, how good your AI algorithms as well. But the challenge is the attacker could also be deploying some smart AI algorithms. And so, we do believe that biometrics need to be localized, tokenized. They should never be stored on NPC, the PCs of the users or, on servers, because those are always the most attractive points for a hacker. In fact, we have a number of instances where centralized biometric databases have been hacked. And the big risk with biometrics is once you lose them. Okay, like your fingerprints, if you lose all your 10 fingerprints and you lose them. So therefore, which is why the solutions we are doing and others are doing as well, things like FIDO protocols, they talk about localizing biometrics and tokenizing them with strong security protocols. So biometrics are useful, but they can't be the only solution. And they can be very risky, in fact, if not properly handled.
You kind of remind me of Matrix movie, if you have seen that.
Yes.
That's actually interesting. So it's a good thing. So, let me ask you or move on to the next question is, is there a trust in this world at all anymore? We can't trust people, we can't trust devices. So is there any trust left in the world, or are we all, including human beings, trustless?
Well, in a connected digital world, your trust is as good as how decent the other person is, other company is. I think the blunt answer is no. You need to have the best of the tools coming up, and they keep getting challenged. So there's no trust, which is why we do need to develop solutions where one of the things which fascinates us, is decentralization of data. So why should I have my credit card details, my birth details, my other sensitive details, what we call PII, to be stored by multiple hotels, multiple airlines, and all our information is everywhere, and everybody is actually spending a lot more money trying to secure this. So that need not be the case, and I think this all happened because now you have massive amounts of centralized data points, repositories where the data has grown, and everybody likes it because data mining is a big business, and so you don't know whom to trust. And I think the question is, a major mail provider we all use has admitted 3 years ago that they do read emails for advertising purposes. So that's where it is. And of course, we continue to use their mail service. But the question is, there is no trust because data is a big business, and inevitably, even if the company is right, insiders can abuse that data. Employees can abuse that data. We've seen that as well. So I think there is no trust, to be honest, out there. It's only a question of whether you care about it or not.
So can I ask a question, Ashar?
Yeah, by all means, Rob, go ahead.
So have you guys put much thought into how that decentralization could be done? Is it involved, are there specific technologies or approaches that you're considering?
Thank you. So we've been, the couple of approaches you can do. One is semi-decentralization, which is what we're doing in our solution. So use some of the cryptographic protocols, essentially to start with identity. So if you build the solutions we've built, is essentially the user generates identities, user retains them, and shares certain public knowledge of that to servers, and is able to prove his identity based on that. So that's a semi. So you still have the AD and identity management centralized, but at least the credentials are decentralized, and that's the first approach we're doing. But eventually, we would move towards a more blockchain-based kind of approach, where, for example, a solution we built is on our Rubik's blockchain platform is decentralized ID. And I think there are a few other great companies trying to build that. It's very interesting. In fact, today, so what it means is I create my own identity. I own the private key of it, a private share of it. But hey, I've created, so it has no value. But then I go and build verifiable claims or proofs. I go to a passport office, which has its own identity, public identity, and they do a signature. And this is stored on a blockchain. Similarly, I go to a driver license and they sign. So I build a profile. So when I prove that I have this private key or private share, people can then check on the blockchain, oh, this guy is verified by passport authorities, is verified by driver license. So this is something we've already built. And I think that would start this decade coming out. One is that it's also called self-sovereign identity, but an interesting aspect comes out of it. Look, we all carry identity trust persona. As Ramesh was asking, is there any trust? We've all been, we've all had good behavior of logging into Gmail, my previous organization, my bank. There is a history of it. But that history is very much with the ID provider or that organization. Today, when I move to a new bank or a new organization, I'm not able to carry the trust. I have to prove again my KYC. So can we prove that I have this history without revealing the sensitive confidential part? And I think that can be done. I think there's some great work being done there. So that's one for identity. But eventually, you could do the same thing with your credit card data. You could do the same thing with your other kind of data which you could use, tokenize the data. And I think it's possible today to build a decentralized email. And there are storage challenges, but there are, excellent decentralized file systems like ipfs, which are scaling well. So there are platforms. I am not saying that it's going to happen now, but this decade we're going to see some great products come out of that.
Interesting to see or hear, emails on blockchain, identity on blockchain. I've always heard about identity. So are you saying that, or if I'm hearing it correctly, the next generation or this current trend of technologies, everything, especially cybersecurity, would be powered by this decentralized kind of blockchain kind of things? Is this where the direction is going to make?
I do think a part of it, Rameshwar, I do think a part of it will get into that, when you have addressed the scale and issues of blockchain, which we are working on. And there are others also working on that. I think that will get there because, and that would also not just solve the just security issue, it solves the trust issue. And it's quite empowering that way that users can have their data in their own control, can prove that what they are, what they've done in the past, and it's quite possible to do that. I think this decade will see a lot of work on that, and it's quite digitally empowering users, in my opinion, and that's going to happen. And I think that's very important in the next stage of digital growth. Anyway, people are working remote now. People are distributed. People are decentralized in a way, and I think the next thing is the technology and tools change that way. And I think a blockchain-based, I'm not saying it's a panacea, it would solve all the issues, it won't, but definitely it will play a key role.
I definitely, this is very exciting to hear about. I love that you're pushing this thinking forward. The one thing is I've been investigating, how worried are you guys about the sort of 51% situation? And have you done thinking along those lines about how we might deal with that?
So, can you repeat that again? Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just saying, very, very excited about the thrust on the decentralization. I think that's definitely the future, and I'd love to hear how you guys are advancing that. My question is, though, as I've looked at it, one of the worries for me is the sort of 51% issue where an attacker could basically take over by overpowering with CPU power. What kind of thinking have you guys done along those lines?
Great. I think the first generation blockchains depend on GPU, CPU, and the 51% attack is a pertinent risk. I'm not saying it will play out, but it's a risk. And I think there are other challenges with the early blockchains. For example, Bitcoin is a great blockchain, but it works very well for a purpose they intend it to be. But there are storage issues. You can't have one ledger being shared by everyone, and it won't work in a real application. But it works very well for a currency, if you want to call it an application. So some of those issues are being addressed by some of the next generation blockchains, and I think in our Rubik's blockchain we're trying to work with that as well. You can't depend on a CPU, GPU. You need to look at, you need to take a step back and say, what do? I don't need to store everybody's data and worry about securing that. I need to store my data, my transaction data. And how do I use things like ipfs? How do I use cryptographic primitives to ensure that I'm able to build these proofs and signatures and use tokenization? I think I'm a big fan of tokenization. You need to start with tokenization. Again, some of the early blockchains don't have tokenization. They have coins, but they don't have tokenization. They have common ledgers. So they solve some great problems, but they can't be extrapolated to identity and security solutions. So you're very much right in saying that the challenges, we're not there yet in solving that, but I think in a year or two, you will have some exciting platforms that can solve that.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, interesting. And they were good questions. So I was reading the other day that the hackers are sparing none. Literally, they're going behind the wallets because they can't hack the blockchain. So it's interesting to hear and exciting, but at least here I feel, there's some trust in zero trust word. Hopefully they don't hack the blockchain. So, this brings, the questions after questions coming up, but in interest of time, traditionally, we've mixed Bitcoin with blockchain. I'm touching a little bit of the hot topics, which is in the market. Given Apple just made a statement, Elon Musk made a statement. I see everybody laughing, so I didn't want to, but I'm asking on it. This question: have we mixed Bitcoin with blockchain, or blockchain has become Bitcoin? And then we had things like Ethereum. IBM used Hyperledger. I just saw a statement last week said IBM is going out of Hyperledger, but then I saw a podcast saying IBM is fully committed to Hyperledger. what's happening? Are these all folks, or are this hype behind the reality?
Oh, it's very interesting. So what I believe, and I think this is all for debate. So it's a very strongly opinionated subject. So anything you say can be debated actively because it's early stages of development. But people most people mix Bitcoin and blockchain, and they think it's the same. And you can't fault it in early stages of any technology that happens. It's like we had Xerox. And for a long time, I never knew photocopy. I knew Xerox, in the sense, a crude analogy. But so I think, people who work in this area know the differentials. What is one trend that is coming out is there's been public chains like Bitcoin and, Ethereum, and they all use, as Kyle was mentioning about CPUs, GPUs, so they're not practical for many real-world enterprise applications. You can't build supply chain on that. Then you have layer 2, layer 3, which brings huge security issues. So there has been growth in permission blockchains. People come out and say that, look, we can do permission, trusted, semi-trusted blockchains. They're good conceptually, but the challenge is that, people have discovered that, look, if I'm going to go decentralized, I need to have security and cost benefits, or at least efficiency benefits. And if I don't have them, I would stick with the centralized. So I think what we've seen this year, over the last 6 months, 2020, is some of the private permission blockchains, not all, go out of favor because those pilots have not really transitioned to benefits. So people are trying to now build up fully decentralized blockchains. Tokenization is very much popular. Just like, identity tokenization, I think we talked about Apple does it, credit cards do it, Visa does it. So can we do it in a trustless manner? So I think this space, according to me, is going to be very key to security in the area. But I don't want to be, can we again build something where we don't need to deploy a lot of security tools to secure? It's a growing cost, ever-growing cost like IT. And organizations and consumers need to spend less and get more out of it. What's happening right now is the other way around, So I think some of the blockchain concepts will help a lot. So this is an area, but beyond security, I personally believe that, we're doing some very interesting work there in our Rubik's blockchain. So would, bring a lot of benefits, especially, throwing my financial hat from past. I think it would usher in participative capitalism. There are some very interesting use cases, tokenizing, I've seen about artists, things like that. It will help empower a lot of artists, and you can tokenize real estate. So I think it transforms finance in a way which I believe is exciting. You take away the speculative part, I think there's some great work that can be done. Speculation is there, of course. It's very difficult to comment on that, but.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. And you did touch off two things: tokens, arts, and probably this. Actually, we started with cybersecurity and moving a little bit onto this whole NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Is this, can you help us understand what NFT is and what is this hype about? Yesterday I saw a Japanese art being sold for some $1 million or something. How is this related to a blockchain? We started with cybersecurity, then we said we'll lay it with blockchain, and now we are talking of a non-fungible currencies, and now going to NFT. Is cybersecurity driving innovation path, or it's digressing from its original goal of securing the fortress? Or I guess we don't have a fortress anymore. I would say that.
Well, I think cybersecurity is important to whatever you do in technology. Centralized, decentralized blockchain, without proper identity, security, digital identity, you're going to be challenged. That's what, as you mentioned about coins being stolen in Bitcoin, if you don't have access security, storage security, you're going to be challenged, So in any space. So that's kind of, I believe, an evergreen area. But you talk about non-fungible tokens. I talked about, how do you, there are large pockets of your economy which don't have liquidity. Just a couple of examples. We talked about artists, people, artisans, not just artists, the people who are doing some great work remotely, all parts of the world. How do they reach out? How do they build the trust? So that's where the blockchain starts playing a part. Supply chain, blockchain starts playing a key part. But also, you can tokenize, real estate. Think of it that, I have this house, I have this piece of land. I do need some liquidity. Today, I take this whole piece of land, and then go to a bank. It's a cumbersome process, so there is some, I have a whole commercial building. Can I dynamically tokenize 1/10 of the part? And then, you talk about a budding artist, who's always struggle in the beginning. You have an artist or a sportsman, they always go through struggles. They can't get finance themselves, So can they tokenize themselves, their future earnings, and, a bit, and that would help them to, actually do the whole hard part. And those are the areas where we're seeing innovation. And I think, you talked about $1 million. There's a lot of speculation that always happens, but I do think this would empower a lot of people, tokenize a lot of illiquid assets, even private equity, for example. Can you tokenize and let smaller investors participate much early on, rather than buying in a very hyped up IPO price where you're quite likely to, lose from the, very hyped up listing. So there are, there are areas where everybody's debating. It's very early stage, but I think it's quite exciting.
Yeah, good. So we'll come back to the human skills. Coming from the CTO Academy, we are all about training or grooming the future CTOs. You yourself have been a CIO/a CISO. How do you see an amalgamation of the roles of a chief technology officer? We've had chief security CISOs and CTOs. Do you see a synergy, or is it going to be one future leader or a CTO who's going to be a CCO, or vice versa?
Yeah, I think, CISO is a very specific, technically specific subject. So they're expected to be on top of security trends, challenges. So whereas a CTO, from what I understand, needs to look at technology holistically. Now the problem is today, the way they work, CISO is always defensive. He's trying to be very, very, diligent about what security tool he uses. Okay. And, it's difficult to, sometimes they can be rigid as well, because, they're trained to be security professionals. Okay. A CTO is always flexible. He's looking at costs. He's looking at implementation issues. So there are issues, but I do think the CTOs need to be more proficient in security. They need to ensure security is built in right from the beginning. And if they are viewing that, okay, CISO has told me this tool, so I'm implementing this, and if something goes wrong, CISO is to be blamed or fired. I think that's a problem now. And I think that's putting CISOs under stress as well. So I think the CTOs, if a CISO can transform to a CTO quickly, that's the best for organization. That's what I believe.
Interesting paradigm. We're getting close, but a couple of things is, like I said at the very beginning, this is the modern workforce, actually, baby boomers to Gen Z, I think 4 or 5 generations. We're all decentralized, thanks to the word decentralized. You yourself being a growing company, how are you tackling with the culture and this whole decentralized mode?
Oh, it's challenging. So technology can be decentralized, okay? For an innovative company like ours, it's a big challenge. We do want people to huddle, and the culture it's been very difficult to manage when people are remote in an enterprise like ours. And we're learning, and I think the new models will evolve. And what we believe is a flexi model where people have to meet up and brainstorm. And I think there are some nice tools evolved, but I don't think humans can adopt that fast. In terms of that emotive feel, which is very important in new technology development. And we do a lot of new tool development. So it has to be a mix of these things, in my opinion. I mean, security challenges for remote workers, how do you secure that apart, which is a routine discussion. This has been challenging in many ways. And I think more routine organizations like back offices and call centers. I think you can be distributed. If your security is taken care of, you can be distributed. Okay, but because it's very easy to measure the success KPIs and this thing. But if you're on the innovative side, it's going to be difficult, and you need a flexible approach.
Well, Chakradhar, actually, I'd love to have longer. We're at the top end of the hour. It's a pleasure and an honor on behalf of CTO Academy to invite you, and we look forward to having you. Next month, we are actually coming back to the US, and this time we're going to talk about quantum computing. So we're all about innovation and modernization, and look forward. And again, if we could drop a question with the CTO Academy. Thank you all.